Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and that is Joe McGrath.
Hello.
And we are talking about attackers today, and specifically, Joe, we've been through a lot of these names before that we're going to go through today, but I think there's a question that is sort of building behind the scenes. It's, are any of them right for Man United? That's the question we're going to get into. We're going to look at the big names we're linked with, the big money moves that we're linked with. We're going to look at some sort of cheaper alternatives as well. And also a third option of, yes, we aren't happy with the strikers that we've got now, but is it the case maybe that for one reason or another, none of these players make sense? No one wants that to be the case, but we'll go through it. But first of all, how are you?
I'm good. Square pegs, round holes. That's a saying I've learned recently.
It's a good one.
It's a great saying. I think I've got like, do you know, like an uncle at a party? I've got like 4 key stories I like banging on.
Right.
And I've got a selection of key United points that I've been banging on maybe since Fergie left, and that was the fact that strikers at Man United have always been my want, and like that lust for someone that gets up into the realm of 20, 25 plus goals, and we have had it, but the consistency just hasn't been there. And you look at the end of the season and you look at the score tallies, and your top striker is your midfielder, and or a winger, and it's like, where is our number 9s that grab it by the scruff of the neck? And there was elements of Rashford in that great season where he put in a world-class performances for us, and that faded, and this season's been bad. Bruno's picking up the goals here and there, but we need strikers.
We're desperate. Well, I was just thinking about it then, and I'm literally coming up with this off the top of my head now, so correct me if I'm wrong, anyone. But I think the only striker that scored 20 goals 3 times for United is Rashford in the last 10 years.
Is Rashford, yeah.
Because Lukaku did once, Ronaldo did once, I think Martial did once or twice, Van Persie did once post-Fergie.
Of course.
Zlatan did once. Like, you talk about the consistency, we've never had anyone other than Rashford, and he's not technically a striker, get 20 goals in all comps 3 times at United. That's horrendous, isn't it? For a 10-year period.
And it sort of backs up your point, where we're going to talk a little bit more into the idea that if we might get a player just to try and see if they're right. And in a year's time, we might be talking about a player that just didn't fit and didn't hit that high mark of 20 plus goals, which, let's be honest, if we're throwing some of this money around that we'll talk about soon, they should be getting. So we don't want to be doing this video again. But hopefully some of these names might actually be well suited. Yeah, so let's start with Victor Gyökeres, because this is the one that's sort of gone on the longest, obviously because of those links to Ruben Amorim. We were linked with Gyökeres before Amorim even arrived at United, and that's pushing 10 months ago or so now, maybe 9 months, whatever it is. It's been a long time. We're looking in the region of, well, it's certainly going to be under 100 million euros, because that's what his release clause is, and they've said they'll let him go for less than that, probably somewhere in the 60 to 80 million quid region. He's got 97 goals in 102 appearances. He seems like an absolute dead cert in terms of goals. Yeah. But for some reason, a lot of people aren't that sure on him. They're not sure how he'll translate to the Premier League. And it seems as though this is Amorim wanting him more than Wilcox and Barada and the football team wanting him. What are your thoughts on him? Do you think any of the criticism or the scepticism comes from the idea of, we've been here before when managers have come from a different league and they've brought players over for good value money and they've just not seemed to perform in the Premier League, and we've been sort of stung by it before, so the ones above are looking at what Ten Hag did and thinking to himself, we can't have this incidence again. But I see him as, first of all, you read the player and club relationship at Sporting is completely, or looks like it's completely breaking down. So he's there and available. It looks like he prefers Arsenal would be a move that he'd want. Maybe he sees himself the final piece in the puzzle for a Premier League winning side there, because Arsenal are much closer than we are. But in terms of his stats and what he can bring in terms of fitting in tactically to what Amorim is building, if we're going to trust Amorim and we're going to say that you are our man, and Barada talked today openly with The Athletic, I know Stretford Paddock were tweeting about it, about they've sat down, they've planned out 2 to 3 years time when there's a Premier League winning side hopefully in 3 years. If this is part of the system, this is the domino that needs to fall, then let's he's my preferred option. Let's spend the cash on him. It just really depends on how much Amorim has got in terms of sway. If he says this is him or nothing, then hopefully the board, who are reluctant to sort of spend more on this player, will give in. The longer it goes on, the longer the saga continues, I worry that we will lose him and he might go to Arsenal because they, unfortunately, they are a big club. We're not competing against a small club of Arsenal. We're competing against a club that just need maybe a signing to go on and push really hard for their first Premier League in ages. So, Gyökeres for me, he's number one.
Yeah.
But do we want a player whose heart's not necessarily in it for Man United?
I know there's a few worries with Gyökeres, isn't there? And we've been through a lot of these on the channel, but I do think the point you just made about that Omar Barada interview is something I wanted to sort of fold into this video anyway. Because obviously it was Andy Mitten for The Athletic, so obviously reliable journalist, reliable outlet, speaking directly to Barada. There's no spin on it. It was just an interview. And I think the 2028 thing is important, and obviously we knew about that anyway. But I think for him to reiterate that, it shows you though how right things have to be. Because we were chatting upstairs before with Ronaldo and some of the other guys in the studio, and people were saying, is that possible? Can United actually get 2028? It's not very far away. Well, you think, it's this transfer summer window, it's the one after, and it's the one after that.
Yeah.
So it's 3 summers and three winters as well. Transfer windows worth of players, and also you think, it's short term and it's quick, but you're probably going to get 10 players in that time. If 8 of those are the right player, then that is enough. Because I think this current squad, with 8 really good signings in it, should be enough to challenge for the league. Because by then you've replaced almost everyone.
Yeah.
It's like you've made your own team, and if the owners and the people buying the players are actually good enough and actually get the right players more often than not, then why would it take any longer than 3 years, would be my question. Because if you think, well, 3 years is too quick, all right, then let's say you get 10 years then.
Yeah.
Well, by then, half the players you bought this summer will have gone.
Yeah.
In fact, almost all of them will have. And the same can be said. So maybe then you go, okay, for 5 years, maybe that's the sweet spot. But then all you're doing is allowing yourself 2 years of getting it wrong or more mistakes per year. And again, look through the Man United squad right now. Who that we bought 5 years ago is even still here? Luke Shaw.
And if they are, they're here for reasons that we all scratch our heads and think maybe they should have gone.
So let's say we bought them 5 years ago and we're glad they're still here. Luke Shaw maybe on that list. Maybe. Right. Bruno,
I'm still thankful. Yeah, Bruno's here. Maguire, I'm still thankful-ish for a little bit of his expertise in the back.
And is that it? I think that's it. 5 years. So let's say you make a few mistakes and you get it wrong. In 5 years' time, you're probably only going to have a couple of players still even in the squad anyway. So for me, it almost has to work in 3 years, because if it doesn't work in 3 years, why would it work in 5 years or 6 years or 10 years? Because all you're saying to yourself is, we're just accepting that we're going to keep fucking it up. If you actually do get it right, it only really takes 3 years to build a squad. And
the building blocks you can get in place from now. I also think as well, and I hate sort of using this line, but we're Man United.
Yeah.
Like, let's be ambitious. We are one of the richest clubs in the world. We can make a lot of money because we've got such a great fan base. We are such an iconic name. 3 years is where I'd like my senior board to lay down their jobs, because they're saying this is their jobs on the line as well. Yeah. And they're going, here is our targets. People might think it's ambitious, but as you just broke it down then, it's not really. And if the right manager and the right players come in, you can push forward. We don't want to look at Arsenal too much, but Arteta and a good chunk of money did get them in a fighting position. Yes, they've not won it yet, but I think that's more down to other attributes, going up against a great Man City side, and they've fallen off this season, But I believe that for the board to tell us how ambitious they are could only be a good thing for the rest of the squad leaking down. You're going into a side now at the age of 25, 26, knowing that if you're good enough and you're at the top of your game, you can pick up a Premier League title before you're 30. Yeah. And that's what everyone should be saying. Yeah. That's what all the squad should think. You're in this for the next 3 years. If you want to play a part, we can pick up, one of the biggest trophies in world football in 3 seasons' time.
Yeah, I mean, that obviously would be amazing, or at least be challenging. And I think you look at Arsenal, look at any of the teams that have gone from not challenging for league titles to challenging for league titles. The most recent one is Arsenal, and I think it was first half a season. They finished 5th or so, and then I think they finished 8th and then 8th again, and then after that it was like 2nd. So it kind of...
Second, or is it 3rd this year? Second.
Yeah. So then, but it basically took them 3 seasons to be challenging, which
spot.
is in line with what Barada's saying. You look at Liverpool when Klopp arrived, that was the real catalyst, wasn't it?
Yeah.
His 4th season, they were challenging for the league title. You look at...
Well, you want to go all the way back to Man City when they got their influx of cash. It took them
4 years.
It took them 4 years. It took them a good FA Cup win against Stoke in the final to really set the world alight. And then the season after that, although they slogged it out all the way to the bitter end, and we know that as United fans they did, it really did take them to a certain... It took them, like you say, 4 years.
Yeah.
And of course, we can look back at that now. We can criticise certain things that they've done.
Yeah, of course.
But
also,
money and the right manager, it got them there.
Yeah, it did.
Because, not everyone can do that.
No, and we can do that. And I do think that if you are going to be getting it right, it only really does take 3 or 4 years. And from when Ineos came in, which was 2024, Christmas 2024, it will be 4 years, 2028, by the time supposedly we're challenging for titles. And I don't think that is an unrealistic timeline whatsoever. Because like I said, if it's taking much longer than that, it's because you've made fuck-ups. And if you're an ownership and a team that make a lot of fuck-ups, you're probably never going to get it right. And if you do, it's out of luck rather than competence. A few other players to mention, and again, I don't want to dwell too much on these guys because we've sort of analysed a lot of these players already, but there's obviously Osimhen, who the main sort of hold-up with him seems to be his wages and dealing with Napoli. I think there's reports that he wants sort of 300k plus, which is
just not what Man United do now.
Yeah,
I mean, we broke down, or there was a lot of talk by the financial sort of social media experts, and I've watched 1 or 2 social media videos on it. I know you guys touched upon the latest quarterlies, and you look back at year on year, Ineos is like sort of the first chunk of period in time where they were sort of in the red by a large amount, and now they have turned things around and they've done it brutally and they've cut things left, right and centre, and we don't seem to look like the Man United of the old, but we might be looking at a Man United of the new. That 300k on top of a player's head, it just doesn't fit right for me in this new system. So that would be a cut for his wage, and I just don't think he'll go for that.
No, especially if he's got other options. That's the thing. We're looking at Gyökeres fancies Arsenal. Osimhen fancies a bit more money. United are going to end up being the sort of, the person winking at you at the end of the bar at the end of the night, who when they first winked at you thought, I'm not going in with them. Yeah. And now you ain't got many options.
You're in a bush.
What?
Sorry.
That's what I don't want to happen, is that Osimhen goes, oh, fuck it. Right, yeah, I'll go in with Man United. I didn't think I wanted to, because then all it takes is a bust up in training, or United to start, be 7th after the first 15 games next season, and does Gyökeres or does Osimhen start going, actually, agent, a loan back to a Champions League team might be a good thing. And it's all
anyone would talk about as well.
Yeah,
you talk about the fact he's on a ridiculous amount of money. They'd compare him to other strikers who were scoring more than him at other clubs. They do, like you could already see the wage graphic on Sky Sports when he hasn't scored in the first 3 games.
Pounds spent per goal scored.
Yeah, and it's like he's bottom or whatever's the worst. And it's like that pressure gets to. I mean, these footballers, hopefully are shielded, but it does get to them.
Still human.
They still see it.
And you always see like footballers get all this stick and criticism, and then once they retire, they go on a podcast and tell you about how low they were, and everyone goes, "Oh yeah, maybe we should have been a bit nice." You think we know at the time whether it's nice to slag someone off constantly or not. Ekitike is another name. Again, younger guy, 22 years old, 15 goals, 8 assists this season in the league. Frankfurt want 100 million euros for him. I think they surely would be willing to drop that a little bit. But it's so much money. The other options are these kind of slightly more stopgap players, which we have fallen guilty of before with the likes of Cavani, Ighalo, even Ronaldo was never going to be here for a long time, Zlatan the same. You've got the likes of, and again, this isn't a stopgap in terms of age, because I think he's 27, but Mateta maybe isn't someone that is going to be a world-class player for you for 10 years, but he's probably a lot cheaper. It might be an option from Crystal Palace, although he's probably going to want to play in Europe with them.
Of course.
There's even players like Danny Welbeck, 34 years old, but has that United connection. Yeah. Also had a good season for Brighton.
He had a good season for Brighton.
You even mentioned before we started recording, Jamie Vardy.
I'd just get him into the back. I'd get him as a Michael Owen. Do you remember when we got Michael Owen?
Yeah.
And he was absolutely, he did nothing but for some reason, Fergie wanted him. I don't know if it was to teach the youngsters or just have a personnel around like that. If it's going to cost us I don't know how much wages it'll be. and teach the youngsters just to fucking leg it down the pitch and get it and boot in the back of the net.
Yeah.
That is tongue-in-cheek, that one. But it just, the similarities are pulled from Michael Owen, and then 1 minute he's scoring the winner in the derby because he's still got a little bit about him. I worry about the stopgap players just because we've been there and done it, but then I also worry about the youngsters because we've also been there and done that with Hoyland, and we've seen what... I still think there's a player in Hoyland, but we've seen what it can be like where the weight of the badge is on top of one player up top, and I just think, do we roll the dice with that again? Do we end up spending a bit more money because Katike is the most expensive on that list that we've got there? It's like, that feels a hefty burden to throw on this player.
I know, because that will get scrutinised like no other. Like Jack Grealish went to City for 100 million quid, and yes, he gets criticised.
But he also had quality around him. He had quality around him to help him bed himself into the squad a little bit better. And, when he wasn't particularly playing well, others around him were, and City were winning. Yeah. Whereas if the striker doesn't play well at United, as we've seen, it can mean, losses left, right and centre and bottom half of the table. So we need someone who scores straight, gets going straight away.
So, all right, of the options we've got, not just those guys in particular, but the style of play that we're looking at, is it feasible for you that none of these are right for Man United? Could we have a situation where we start next season and our strikers are Hoyland, Xerxes if available, Chido if available, and maybe Cunha can play up front, when one of those is injured? Is that
I'd be very nervous if that was the case about what was to come, just because I'd like a little bit more. Like, there's some of the names you've read out there. I'd prefer one of them come in than none of them come in. In that situation you described there, I just see that it just didn't work. And if there is frustration of Amorim from this season because he didn't have the right players, and all he was talking about was his formation, how he likes his players to work, and if he couldn't get out of the 6 months he's been with United, if he couldn't get them going by that 6 months, and I know there's talk about he wants time with these players, but he didn't really get a tune out of any of them. Maybe Xerxes a little bit, he became a bit better towards the back end of the season, especially not Hoyland. I would be nervous going into this start of the year. My predictions table that everyone does, I'd struggle to put us higher than 6th.
Yeah. Would you? So with all that being said, then would you prefer us to try and break the bank for an Ekitike, a Gyökeres and Osimhen, even if they all have flaws and potential weaknesses, or would you prefer us to get a Mateta, Vlahovic, a Jonathan David on a free potentially, a Welbeck, someone sub 50 million who, reputationally, if they're replaced in 2 years, it's not going to be front page news.
Going into this transfer window, I was talking about your top and your bottoms. I needed someone in net and I needed someone up top, and if the middle would stay the same, I would just have to live with that, because I knew there was going to be limited cash. The bottom's not being talked about a lot.
Nope.
The bottom's going to be. It feels like it's going to be exactly the same. Please sort the top. Now we've looked at bringing more attacking players, but I'm talking about my striker. I want someone I'm happy to stick on the back of my shirt for the first time in years.
And even just,
do you know what I mean?
Even just that t-shirt.
Even just this Nike top that I've got. No one's inspired me. I mean, Bruno's come close, but I want someone where we could be like, what a signing, what a brilliant man who is the person to bring goals and that sense of glory back to United. So I'd break the bank a little bit for Gyökeres. He's my number one. The stats aren't lying there either.
No, he's got so many goals.
We have a good history of buying from Sporting as well. There's been some great stars we've brought in from them. The Portuguese league, has a little bit more grit about it than the Dutch league. So you think, oh, come on, go for it.
Right, let us know in the comments, what do you think we should do? It seems like we've got 3 options. Big money, break the bank, slightly safer short-term option, or stick with what we've got.
4. Jamie Vardy.
No,
is that one of them?
It could be.
Right. Get in the comments.
Thank you very much for joining us. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you very much, Joe, for coming on.
Thank you.
Make sure you check out the Sloppy Joe's podcast. Of course, the link to that is in the description, and we'll see you in a bit.